Make sure that I emphasize that this is no means a disaster case management class. If you are interested in in-depth training, contact UMCOR. Popular training programs can also be found through our faith-based partners, and contacting your state voluntary organizations active in disaster or VOAD. There are a number of ways that a disaster case manager can interface with LTRGs, and I'll share some of them today. Today I will go over the function of disaster case management and how to best coordinate with the long-term recovery group, and also a few model examples of possible long-term recovery group structures. And I will just be able to go over a few. There are a lot. So, a function overview of disaster case management. How the long-term recovery group operates is essentially up to you. The information that comes in will come from the subgroups and will be shared with different parts of the group, as depicted in this diagram. It'll go through the operations and filter through and be shared with all the subgroups. Whoa. This diagram essentially says that administration support services are also at the center of the process and will aid how the group communicates and coordinates. This logo is used with permission, and UMCOR works collaboratively within the National VOAD member and partner network to identify, assess, and foster solutions to help individuals and families to disaster case management services and resources. Meeting immediate survival needs, food, water, and shelter is certainly important to work following a disaster. During the relief phase, caseworkers often assist survivors with information and referral and help meeting these urgent needs. But disaster case management prime concern is to assist persons to move from the victim status to that of survivor, from needing relief to being recovered. Disaster casework is done in the relief phase. It is short-term, addresses immediate and transitional needs, whereas disaster case management is personalized problem-solving and advocacy with individuals and families throughout their long-term recovery. It is disaster case management that eases survivors out of the relief period after disaster and links them to the long-term recovery solutions by identifying resources and services of which they may not otherwise be aware. Disaster case managers work alongside survivors until they have adjusted to their new normal. Disaster casework is early intervention provided by skilled helpers who aid survivors in taking steps in their recovery. Interventions include providing accurate and timely information and referral, and identifying resources to meet urgent needs and screening for disaster program eligibility, including long-term disaster case management. This early intervention helps to minimize the risk of duplication of benefits, which may pose barriers for recovery. It also assists in restoration of pre-disaster social service benefits for qualified individuals, and provides clients with information on the importance of record keeping for future assistance. So disaster casework is often initiated in the relief phase of disaster response and may complement disaster case management in the recovery phase. And this makes the transition into case management. So refer to the National VOAD website for points of consensus and guidelines and documents referring to disaster casework and disaster case management. Disaster case management is a time-limited process by which a skilled helper, a disaster case manager, partners with a disaster-affected individual or family, a client, in order to plan for and achieve realistic goals for a recovery. Following a disaster, this comprehensive and holistic disaster case management approach to recovery extends beyond providing relief. It provides a service, and it meets urgent needs. The disaster case manager serves as a primary point of contact, assisting the client in planning and coordinating necessary services and resources to address the client's complex disaster recovery needs in order to reestablish normalcy. Disaster case managers rely on the client to play an active or lead role in their own recovery. Not everyone affected by a disaster needs or wants help, and in fact, it is not unusual for a small percentage of people to be willing to work in partnership with voluntary agencies to help them recover. But for those whose recovery needs to outweigh their resources, our help is needed. Disaster case managers work with survivors to assess not only the most evident or urgent needs, but all elements that could potentially pose recovery barriers, as well as all assets, including financial, social, spiritual, communal, and so on. Disaster case managers ask, what does this person in this community need to recover from this disaster? The first thing a case manager is to do is assess the information with clients and then verify it. Case managers ask, what happened in the area? What does recovery look like to you? And this is something that they'll ask each individual subgroup. What resources do you have? And then what will you need to recover? The goal of case management is to promote healing after a disaster. The goal of the case manager is to promote healing and dignity through compassionate and skilled interventions through recovery. Healing includes restoration of shelter, material items, and emotional and spiritual well-being. It can provide a sense of family integrity. It can give support systems and economic resources that are sufficient for self-sustainability. It is therefore holistic, and FEMA and others may assist survivors with disaster cause needs, while the focus for disaster case managers is on the disaster recovery needs. And these are needs that fall between the gaps of public agency services that, when met, empower survivors to achieve sustainable recovery. We believe that successful healing is a result of keeping the responsibility for recovery decision-making in the survivor's hands. So it is essentially up to the client. Doing for the survivors only builds more dependency and can severely restrict or block recovery. Doing with the clients empowers disaster survivors to move from helplessness to self-reliance, and it forms a sense of power and moves them from vulnerable to empowered. Case managers listen and try to understand what problems the family is facing and helps to clarify options. It identifies untapped resources and leaves the decision-making to the family. These are the goals of long-term recovery, and this will not be possible without a sense of partnership. They're holding hands. Aww. This slide outlines the steps that have to be taken through the disaster case management process to come to ultimate the ultimate objective of recovery and a new normal for the client, which is to be able to close the case and hopefully fill the gaps that existed in meeting the client's needs. So this is the process that UMCOR uses for their screening and evaluation. This slide shows the process of how recovery needs are assessed and passed through federal and state resources. If some needs are still unmet, they are shared with a case manager and then goes to the long-term recovery group. The long-term recovery group can then find resources and advocate for unmet needs. Faith-based disaster case management is not an extension of public social services. Likewise, voluntary organizations and the DCMs of voluntary organizations are not an extension of FEMA. Rather, they complement the assistance that FEMA offers individuals and families with respect for the sequence of delivery of disaster assistance. When survivors have unmet needs, they apply their personal resources, and FEMA then comes in with FEMA resources to meet recovery needs. The LTR group pools resources to assist individuals and families with unmet recovery needs, and the unmet needs table or the committee of the LTRG will hear the cases and assess the survivors' remaining unmet needs. In confidential sessions to resolve the remaining recovery needs that cannot be met through any other channel. So how do survivors access the materials, the funds, and other resources of disaster recovery organizations? Case managers. They are the vital link between the survivors' verified needs and the resources available through the coordinated efforts of voluntary organizations and community partners. The disaster case manager is the primary point of contact, and they assist the client in coordinating necessary services and resources to address the complex disaster recovery needs. Therefore, the case manager serves as the central link between the individual family and the LTRGs. Disaster case management coordination. A coordinating structure must be in place to support disaster case management as part of successful long-term recovery. In communities wherein multiple organizations provide disaster case management and supportive recovery services, technical systems should be used to reduce duplicative case management efforts and to facilitate coordination between organizations and systems across the continuum of care. We should always be trying to make sure that we are serving the most vulnerable population. And here are some guidelines. Take a look at the capacity of the organizations that are working in the area. Target a certain population and work with them. Are they homeowners? Are they renters? What is the financial need? Some to consider are the frail and the elderly, disabled, dependent children, and those with medical and mental health needs. This diagram shows how screening and casework helps to get the process of disaster case management going. Early screening is to help determine appropriateness, the scope and the intensity of disaster case management. It is to ensure equitable distribution of resources, and it is also to prioritize those persons with urgent needs, including early recognition of vulnerable populations. They initiate timely services and address urgent needs, and they also schedule intake or plan for other next steps. And they also provide for placement on a waiting list if desired. Caseworkers provide information and referral, and offer short-term planning and referrals for basic and immediate needs, and they may transition the client to long-term disaster recovery case management. So both are very important for the disaster case management process. Let's take a closer look at what support has to be already in place before disaster case management can begin. Only when they have been worked with clients to identify needs, case managers need a place to go to find resources, and that is the long-term recovery group. More often than not, case managers will need all the help that they can garner to help the clients. Listed above are common questions that a DCM may have to ask as they move through the process. So who is going to lay out the work that needs to be done on a home and make sure that the materials are available? What organizations, agencies, or groups will help bring in volunteers and other workers to do the work? What screening and casework will do and how will they work with the DCM? Where are you working? What region? What neighborhood? And for whom are you working for? And one important question to consider is, how long are you planning to stay in this community? There are 4 models that we will look at today. There are, of course, more, but in the interest of time and your time, we'll only go over 4. There are a number of ways a disaster case manager can be in alliance with LTRGs, including but not limited to some examples that I will discuss here. Again, the appropriate structure is dependent upon the needs of the local community and the scale and the nature and the resources of the disaster recovery efforts. So this graph shows you an autonomous approach to disaster case management. Disaster case managers from various voluntary agencies access the LTRG through an established unmet needs committee, but operate case management services separately from the LTRG administration and infrastructure. By autonomous, we don't mean to suggest isolated. The LTRG can provide the coordination necessary to promote sufficient structure and to keep things moving along. The standard criteria for case submissions and assuring that they can create a standard criteria for case submissions and assure that the mechanism is in place to avoid duplication of benefits. A cooperative or a collaborative, or also known as a consortium, disaster case management structure is when 2 or more organizations team up to provide disaster case management in a coordinated manner. Decisions as who gets to open the cases are dependent upon agreements with regards to geography, speciality, and capacity of the organizations. The onus of coordination is upon the collaborative and is also in cooperation with the LTRG. Seconded, which means loaned staff. Responsibility for coordination is on the LTRG. 1 or more voluntary agencies may offer to provide case management services to individuals and families on behalf of the LTRG. Voluntary agencies may pool their resources and hire 1 or more disaster case managers to work as employees for the LTRG. And DCM managers are deployed by the LTRG, who coordinates all aspects of DCM in addition to perhaps all of the other functions as well. LTRGs are most effective when they are supported by a case management advisory group that coordinates DCM. This group will set the service criteria for the group and sets priorities the individual DCMs to work within. The subject matter expertise of this group may serve one or more of the following functions. Resource development, they might provide support, guidance, and opportunities for training. They also offer opportunity for peer review of cases and to be presented to the unmet needs table. Another responsibility is to liaise with other functions of the committees of the LTRG and appoint a representative to serve within the LTRG leadership structure. Everyone should have access and then fund their expectations, which makes sure that all pieces will come together in the end. If you have any questions, please type them in your question box. We will get to them shortly. Long-term recovery groups are encouraged to consider other factors, including but not limited to conflict of interest and dual relationships, capacity of the disaster case management organization, they should always consider the confidentiality of the client's information, and especially when they are sharing information among the group, and make sure that there is no conflict of interest and dual agencies working with the same group or the same client, and make sure that supervision is provided for the case managers as they work through cases. That's also to provide support. The structure for DCM must include the means to recruit, train, and support the case managers before you launch a process you need to make sure that you have a way to recruit, train, and deploy. And how you do that is by building capacity and establishing groups and taking the necessary steps to do so. Disaster case managers and the LTRG will have to prioritize who will get what as the community recovers. Because there will be limited resources, it is best to keep a resource-driven and needs-driven plan that will ensure that those with the most need will be fairly treated through the process. So UMCOR, who provided this portion of today's presentation, offers related training to case management, and they have related forms that can help you through the process. They have unmet needs case presentation and an LTRG DCM committee coordination kind of training. Here is their contact information. Visit their website and contact the necessary conferences or coordinating conferences that would be helpful to you in your region.